All right. Hi, I'm Grin Lord from Therapists in Tech. And tonight we're with Wysa, and we're going to be talking about global digital mental health and learning all about their wonderful app. Why don't we start with some short introductions?
I'll start. I'm Joe. I'm one of the co-founders of Wysa. I lead product. So most of what you see in the AI product of Wysa, that's me and my team.
Hi, I'm Ramakant. I'm one of the co-founders as well, and I lead partnerships and commercial. It's been quite a journey.
Hi, I'm Smriti, and I lead the therapist team at Wysa. I've also been involved with designing some conversations when we first started, and it's been a wonderful journey so far.
Well, thank you for joining me tonight. I know it's your morning, my evening, but it's wonderful to have you for this, kickoff event with TnT and Wysa. We're going to start with some fun questions to get to know each other. Actually, they don't have to be fun, but just any questions where we can get to know you and your team. I know there's some relationships here that are also unusual for a normal tech company, and maybe we'll learn about those as well. But each of you have a question for one of the other teammates, and who would like to start?
I think I'll go first.
Okay.
Because you already gave a hint to my question.
Yeah.
And I think my question is to Joe. Most couples don't even agree on what will be cooked for dinner tonight after their honeymoon phase. How did you guys think of running a startup together? And that too, I mean, it's a brilliant one and it's doing so well now.
Why did you direct the question to Joe and not to me?
That's
the first question. Okay. Joe, please go ahead.
Ramakant and I were colleagues long before we got married. So we were together in college, we were project mates, we joined the same company, then we got married. Then we worked together for about 6 years he quit his job at Goldman Sachs to join me in my nonprofit venture. And we worked for 6 years with a UN-backed foundation trying to solve for terrorism and figuring out that it takes good product market fit. We had presidents and prime ministers, and our board was like the who's who, and we had $100 million, and it didn't take any of that to solve anything. It took a good product market fit in a user's hands. And that's when we figured out we wanted to do something where we didn't have all these constraints. We wanted to solve something, and we liked working together. So a little naive, I think. Because it's different working for somebody else and different being a co-founder. It has put a lot of stress on our relationship, but it was a very rock solid start. So I think we had enough communication between us to say, still the relationship comes first. And at the same time, neither of us will ever give each other a quarter. So we'll never lose an argument because of the relationship.
So now I know why you asked the question to Joe.
You can share your bit as well, I guess.
No, I think I completely agree with what Joe is saying. Fundamentally, I think there's a lot of respect professionally for each other. And we also bring very different strengths to the table. So, which I think really helps. And usually, I think when you're co-founding with your spouse, one of the biggest issues is that both people are overlapping a lot. And both people are trying to do the same things. And here we were very lucky that very quickly we were able to carve out our own spaces. And Wysa also grew to the extent where I think it was able to take the weight of two people. And we've been, I think, very fortunate and very grateful for the kind of growth we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. And now it is at that stage where I think both people are working towards building this out. And I think meeting our aspiration of growth and reaching as many people as possible. So I wouldn't have traded this for the world. So I think this has been an absolutely fantastic journey. Very privileged to be in this space, and yeah, I think it's just looking forward to the next, I think, 4 or 5 years again to see what the future holds for us. Yeah, and Smriti, okay, my turn to ask you the question. Then But it's a slightly more serious one. I think the last year has been tough. I think it has been tough for all of us. And I think I know it's been especially tough for you, given all which you have gone through personally in your life. And as well as I think just the amount of need and vulnerabilities you've probably seen with your clients. So how do you deal with both of those together? I mean, all the stuff which you're going through personally, as well as, the demands of your client work. How do you manage to do justice to both?
That's a tough question because I've always felt like I'm not doing justice to the either side. It's always like um, something knocks on the door that says this is being ignored, and then I have to say no to something very assertively, but with a lot of guilt, and then turn to the other side and attend to it. And then I mean, that's how it's like. It's like I'm imagining my life on a weighing scale right now, and whichever one goes heavier, I just stop looking that side and then I turn that side. So I think in that phase where I'm not looking at the other side completely, then I feel guilt for it, then I turn the other way. So it's been a back and forth totally all this while. And uh, it's been, I think, if it wasn't for Wysa, the workspace that it is, I wouldn't have survived this phase. The kind of support I've received from you guys, the team members, and even clients, the way they have responded to my saying, hey, can we postpone our session for today? I'm not feeling too good or I'm not feeling too well. The way everyone's responded to just asking for help has been fantastic. I think just allowing myself to be vulnerable has been very helpful. Just saying I'm feeling this and just crying out in the town halls, you guys have seen that at the drop of the hat. And I think just allowing myself to be there as is, very honestly and transparently, has helped people also understand that okay, she may need some distance. So my husband treads very carefully inside the room, or when I'm doing something, what may spark her off suddenly, because there's so much that's been happening. But yeah, I think the worst is over. I hope, at least personally and professionally, what's happening outside is happening for all of us together. So yeah, we're in it together.
Justice to yourself. She's been killing it. She has, I think all her therapists love her to bits. They would say they survived because of her. And she then also ends up working with clients, bringing us new clients, getting new content developed, and is the support. She's just lost her father, is the support for her mom, her husband's family, and her kids who are now schooling from home, and she's just moved cities. I mean, you're really a superwoman. You can't say that you're struggling. So Ramakant, I'm going to make it a little lighter on this note. So Ramakant, every year you seem to break one bone in your body. I mean, you broke your back. Now you're like limping with that.
That's true. I have witnessed it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's in the most inane of circumstances, which I won't say. Like, he doesn't even get to say, like I was playing tennis and I broke something. It was just like I stepped on the sidewalk and I broke it.
Slipped on the sofa.
So what's going on here?
Sorry, bad joke, but I think it's the impact. It's a high impact startup. So, bad. But yeah,
dad jokes are Ramakant's thing also. Sorry, we've got a dad joke here.
But yeah, well, I think it's just the year which it has been for everybody. It's probably bad luck. There's nothing more I can say rather than, I mean, I wish I could say I had an injury while mountaineering or rappelling down an ice cliff or something, rather than saying slipping on the soap and falling in the bathroom.
So Ramakant, next year you can go mountaineering.
Next year will be the mountaineering accident. Okay.
Yeah. He has ambitions of how he's going to break his bones.
On your list, on your bucket list. Not having it happen in the house. Wow. Yeah, that was not something I expected, having you discuss breaking many bones this year, but I know it's been tough for everyone. And one thing I just wanted to ask you a quick follow-up question is about these town halls. You were mentioning, Simi, that it was very supportive for you at Wysa, that there was an organization that supported you. You know, at Therapists in Tech, one of the things we're so interested in is, amplifying clinical voices, supporting clinicians that are doing this hard work during this time. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about the town halls and kind of how does your company work to support clinicians?
Joe, would you want to talk about this? Because that was your and Ramakant's idea to get these town halls and get, I think, at least 50 people each time we have these town halls. It's not just for therapists also, it's for the entire organization where we kind of have all these people together. I think Joe would be able to answer this better because she's the one who initiated the whole thing.
I can talk about that, Smriti. You can talk about all the other things you do for the therapist because you do a lot.
Yeah.
So town hall was really because we weren't in office and all our therapists are remote. So we did want everybody to feel like they're one company. So every month we get together. We'll take like a mini training session kind of theme. We might talk about radical candor. We might talk about, what it means. We might talk about compassion fatigue or even leadership styles to recognize that each one of us is a leader. There'll be a place where we celebrate people, introduce new joiners, and really have, most importantly, an open space for people to share. And I think that just comes from company culture because this goes on. We started with what we call the Victories channel. I think that's where, because we hired so many new therapists during this pandemic, and it was very hard to create a culture of authenticity in people who haven't met each other. So we created a Victories channel on Slack, and there people started posting their most vulnerable moments and how they've had victories on them. So really small things like today I was finally able to go on a walk again, or today, I got over the fact that I have to move in with my parents and it's really hard. And I finally accepted them and got over sort of some of my issues with them. And they would open up and people would support them on Slack. And it was a very wide audience. You have your tech team there, and people you wouldn't expect to open up would start opening up. So I think that created a cohort that would then go on to the town halls where then people felt very comfortable when they saw each other face to face in actually even just breaking down and crying or saying, this has been this bad for me, and everybody just feeling like they were there for each other. I think the day-to-day on Slack helped, but Smriti, you put in processes in place and even did research on how it's affecting your therapists.
Yeah. So continuing from where Joe left, we, as a culture, we encourage vulnerability in our workspace because we know it's a tough space, whether it's the content team that get exposed to some kind of data when they are writing new content. They may see some difficult things from the user chats, etc., or whether it's the therapist team who has to go in and out of their sessions, specifically the last entire year. But we started this much earlier, where we have peer supervision sessions where people bring in difficult cases or any cases where they've done really well, there have been breakthrough moments, and they want to share what worked with that particular kind of client or case or the kind of concerns they brought in. So these peer supervision sessions happen every 15 days. And we also record them and keep them for others to kind of just go back to the library, and if they want to see a discussion on PTSD, or if they want to see a discussion on how somebody helped, how a certain training happened over how to address your own compassion fatigue. And then we have therapists weekly check-in sessions, which are nothing but just getting together and having a very, very candid conversation about what's happening, what's going on in their lives, how are they managing in the current scenario. We had just one yesterday, and I think every person broke down on that channel because right now with what's happening in specifically, I think the second wave in India, just hearing the sound of ambulance every couple of minutes is giving us goosebumps. And people are not being able to, our own family, some of the therapists have their family members who are admitted in the hospital, and then clients bring in the same concerns. And then, it feels very difficult to not being able to walk the talk, but being there for another in the same capacity. And so we have these places where people come up and share. We did a compassion fatigue research, like Joe said, in last November, and that's made us take some very helpful decisions for our team, where we are reimbursing therapy for them now, reimbursing therapy for therapists. And we've also helped a lot of people reschedule or take a pause and reassign their clients to another therapist temporarily, where they can just go. One of our therapists just went to a Vipassana camp for 12 days because all that noise that's happening around us and within sessions had completely burnt her out. And she went on to this meditation camp where she didn't speak to anyone for 12 days and came back all refreshed and energized. So, it's all trickling from top down to bottom. That's how it's happening for the entire organization. And I've been as a part of the founding team right from the start, and I was given that space, and I realized how much it helped me given some difficult experience in the past with other organizations. And we decided that we'll make this a safe workspace. I think I spoke too much, but this has my heart in it, totally.
Yeah, it seems like the whole organization is structured to support you so that you can support others. And as you said earlier, Ramakant, we're all going through this together. I also imagine there's some difficulties, cross-culturally with you being in India and maybe serving a client that's not there, not hearing these ambulances. There can be some challenges. So it sounds like you're there for each other and you provide that space and give mental health treatment to your therapists, which seems really healthy for an organization.
Yeah.
I want to rewind us a little bit, because I know I was the one that asked that question about how you're supporting others, but I want to hear a little bit about how did Wysa start? Like, what is the story here? You mentioned it a little bit, Joe, with like, we didn't exactly know that we would find ourselves here. And then I was working a nonprofit. So like, let's hear how it got to this point of being such a success story and so supportive.
Well, I'll take it, Grin, Ramakant, if that's okay.
You can both jump in, we're all
the short version is that it started by accident. We were trying to solve for elder care, Ramakant and I, because that was very close to our heart. We'd come back to India after decades outside and found our parents much aged and not well. And in building that product and even raising money for it, it sort of staked our reputations when you raise money for your startup. And by the time the money hit the bank from angels, we realized that we did not have product market fit. Now, the whole idea of building something was this hypothesis that all it takes to change the world is product market fit. And so not having product market fit meant I had to kill this and return money to the people. And at the same time, everyone was telling me, you just got the money. If you give it back, you'll never do a startup again. So I just went into depression, and there was huge imposter syndrome. All the impact we'd ever had in the world, all the awards we'd won just seemed like a false story. We told people we cannot do it for ourselves. And in that depression, I began to understand mental health from a user's perspective. It always used to be, I think the theory of it used to all be, if we can solve for stigma, then we can solve for mental health. But from a user's perspective, I realized that stigma is not even the beginning of it. It is, even when self-care resources are provided, they spend hours telling you rather than asking you. And even when you find an online therapist, what really helps is what you're saying more than what they're saying. And there was a part of me, because what we'd been doing for elder care was AI, that said, could I build an AI safe space where it would actually figure out what's working for me, what's not, guide me through some of these techniques. I come from an ed tech background, so that product was sort of taking shape in my mind as a skilling product. And but I didn't have the confidence to do it. And I asked Ramakant if he'd sort of continue for another 3 months. He said, yes, 3 months, let's give it. And I said, pivot to mental health. He said, okay. The most supportive partner you can imagine. And we then went to the investors and said, we're going to try to solve for mental health. And we're willing to fail doing that. So that's the one thing I felt in my imposter syndrome, that, even if I fail trying to solve for it, it'll be worth it. And it'll just do it right this time. So, so we went to them, and to an investor, they said, we believe in you, and you can always change what you're going to focus in. If you're investing your time, Ramakant's investing his, we'll invest our money. And so we actually started with trying to detect mental health using AI, because I still didn't have the confidence to build this and say that this is what we'll do. We had been detecting how elder care is, so we pivoted that. We detected depression, and we did it to a 95% accuracy. And even in rural areas, we started out with my sister's, who's a doctor, her patients, and she runs an NGO, so her people, and we were able to find, people who were not even saying that they're depressed because of fear of family. We were able to find that they actually have depression, but only 1 in 30 people got access to therapy.
And this was using mobile data, collecting data from their phones. Sorry, you missed the critical part.
Yes. So just using how their phone was moving about, we were able to do that. And we realized that, we can be doing really cool tech, but we won't be solving the problem. And for the second time,
Sorry, can you explain that a little bit, how that worked? You're saying you track them with their mobile, and I guess I missed that part. How did that work?
Ramakant, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think the concept, Grin, was very simple. It was that even if you're not taking very detailed data about the person, just the fact that they're moving around, or how they're moving around, how their patterns change, how they sleep, the disturbances in sleep. I think a lot of things which you, probably all of the clinicians, for example, who would be watching this, what you would ask your clients or your patients, the phone can also tell, and you don't have to ask. So what we did was we collected that stream of data, and then we applied AI and machine learning to understand that actually there was a very strong pattern which somebody who was at risk of being depressed would show. And we were able to predict or identify depression with an 85-90% accuracy.
Wow, that's awesome. So like a biomarker using the phone in a way.
Yeah.
So phone biomarkers.
Short.
I don't know how you'd call it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We actually realized that, detection, again, the person who's depressed often does know that they're depressed. So being able to access help is the constraint for many different reasons. Even when the doctor would know it and then say you should get therapy, they would say, just prescribe me something. And we realized we'll turn into, the reason, if we were very successful, the reason antidepressants sort of got prescribed a lot more. And that's not what we wanted to be. So we just took a very hard call then. And we had put in this chatbot, which was my side idea, which I wished would have existed. And I just put it in to everybody. And people who were using the chatbot, their depression scores were coming down. And then we went to Dr. Vikram Patel, who's at Harvard now, in the School of Public Health. He said, just asking people how they are is therapeutic. And that gave us the confidence. I remember Smitri, I and Ramakant all went to meet him, and he said, yes, obviously you're getting lower depression scores because just having this conversation is therapeutic. That gave us the confidence that, we are not trying to encroach into what should be clinical territory. There are some things that actually a safe space to feel heard and validated, a safe space to be able to talk through your stressors and depersonalize them. That's something that everybody should have access to, and that can be therapeutic. And it doesn't need to have a therapist. So then we sort of built it out, made sure we had clinical safety built in from the very first, put in an SOS model, linked it to helplines, and Smitri, Ramakant, and I sort of launched this first bot. And before we knew it, we had like 30,000 users in the first couple of months. We started getting used by the NHS. We still haven't done any marketing on the app, and we have 3 million users today.
Wow. Now, tell me about the name Wysa and where the logo came from. It's super cute, but how did that come about?
It was a side project. So literally, we were thinking, Ramakant, what chicken, rabbit.
It was it was
Was
a
it panda?
penguin, and the penguin won out. It was
I think
literally like,
we did an extremely scientific poll of 3 people in the office, and said, "What do you like?" And they said, "Oh, I like the penguin. It's it's chubby and it's cute and it feels very approachable." We said we are going with the penguin, and I think
Nice.
before we realized, I think that had acquired a life of its own, and people love it. I think people have developed very strong attachments to the penguin. We also realized that later, and I think we did realize, we said that, okay, the penguin is something which is also culturally, it can transfer, it's transferable and it works very well across cultures. And also later on, people told us that, look, you can't tell, from a body image point of view, it's something which is very comforting. Then
And
you
also gender neutral.
it's gender neutral. You can't tell whether it's a male or a female. So I think it was serendipity to some extent. And but after that, the looking at the reaction which we got or what our users told us, now you can't mess with the penguin.
Yeah.
If you do anything to
No.
it, our users come back and tell us, no, you please
the
take it.
penguin gets fan mail, it gets fan art.
It's
But the story of why it's called Wysa is a little less sort of by chance. The first chatbot ever was called Eliza. It was a Rogerian therapist, but it was a parody of a therapist. And in fact, when I was depressed, amongst the things that I was trying to feel heard with, I even tried talking to Eliza. And I realized again that, it actually helped to be able to articulate what I was saying, even though all Eliza was doing was asking me questions. And I said, I want to build something like Eliza, only wiser. And that became Wysa. So it's a wise Eliza.
Wysa. Mhm. Wysa, but also a penguin. So a little bit of a mix there. I thought Wysa was an owl because it was Wysa, and I associate like
Wysa.
owls with it. That's on the website. So yeah, it definitely has. I had an attachment to it as well, even though I thought it was an owl. But I love that story of you talking to Eliza. I imagine your chatbot though is much more advanced than Eliza at this point.
Well, our AI-wise, yes, but not as advanced as it could be. We haven't gone to the deep end of AI. We've tried to keep it explainable. The main thing that Wysa does is it's been built over 300 iterations of our therapists looking at the data of objections that the users might make. For instance, you typically have a cognitive restructuring exercise, which would say, this thought is unhelpful, it's not making you feel better, even though it's valid. Let's try to make a more constructive thought out of it. And when people were angry at other people for trust issues, where they'd been cheated on, they did not respond well to that statement. And so I could go back to Smriti and say 10,000 people have objected in this context. So it became like the largest co-design experiment of mental health, where you have 1 million users telling you what works, what doesn't work, even in traditional therapy, sort of self-help roots. And then Smriti was like, okay, let's get you back some more power in this situation. And then we tried that, or let's get you to, control, find out what you can control, or how can you be a better friend to yourself in this situation. And those work much better. And so we sort of tweaked how this language happens, even based on the context of the issue the person has.
Now, does your chatbot adapt across cultures, or is it a set script? Like, how do you deal with the cross-cultural global digital mental health phenomena?
Well, the interesting thing is that the users' conversations are very different across cultures. What the chatbot says is often the same. So we built it for people with English as a second language. It helped that we did not build it in the United States. So we had a global perspective. We had a sense that, even when we started, I remember we said somebody in Liberia or Lithuania should be able to use it. Some of these countries where it should be permissionless. It should be, I can download this, I can help myself. It should be able to increase their self-efficacy. And they should be able to still anonymously get help from a therapist for the team that Smriti is running. So that combination of being able to help yourself or get help in an affordable way, that was what we were trying to go for. So we couldn't do every culture, obviously. So we had to write questions that would work across cultures and sort of be that common minimum. But what often happens is people respond according to their culture, and Wysa will say back to them what they said. So it feels very personalized. So for instance, if someone says, like uses, we even tried it out with a gang youth in New York and Chicago. And they would use their language and Wysa would play back to them. The adaptation really happens in the AI. So for instance, in Singapore, they would use la at the end of a sentence, or they would use different slangs for drugs in the streets of Chicago. So we had to make sure that our AI could detect what they were talking about. Apparently, they would say, I want to eat pasta in certain Instagram slang for suicidal thoughts. So we had to upgrade our SOS models to include that. So that's a challenge, definitely, to make sure that your AI gets a multicultural perspective and it's not trained on one culture. But what the questions we ask, how are you feeling, they actually work across cultures.
And you must tell how many iterations we've reached because of constantly working and upgrading and enhancing the library of words and terms and phrases that are used from across. I think 700.
Yeah, I think so. I say over 300 because I started saying that a year or so ago. It's now.
Yeah, because I see the Android versions pretty often. So I think it's around somewhere around 700.
Yeah.
But I did also want to add something else, Grin, which is that I think we started Wysa as a safe space, as an anonymous safe space, coming out of personal need. And Joe expressing, I think, what she wanted to see and she couldn't find. But also wanted to, Smitri, I think it should be helpful to talk about the evolution into saying that we didn't stop there. We realized that AI is a starting point, but it's not enough. It will never be enough. And the reason why we then decided to build out the therapist team and add the human support layer, the kind of things which you went through to when you figured this out, and set in place a fantastic team. So I think it would be great to hear from you on that thought process of how we started building the full stack and going beyond AI and saying that we do need human support. We need self-help, but then it has to go beyond because self-help will never be enough. And if the user is at the center, then how do we make sure that the user is being helped in whatever way he or she needs?
Even the therapist model is quite unique right now. We're going towards like audio, video, and traditional therapy, but we wanted to keep it anonymous. Smriti, do you want to talk about how the therapist model evolved?
Yeah. When I mean, we had a large user base already, and we were getting feedback around how sometimes AI was not Wysa was not. Probably it was sometimes getting stuck in a loop, or was after people have practiced the skills a certain number of times, they were not being able to generalize it to other similar situations, or we were finding that there were some gaps. And if it was guided self-care, it would be better. And that's when we thought of adding the human layer. And it really began as an experiment where we just decided, okay, because text is working so well, the anonymity is helping people, come on board and talk to Wysa, we would just extend it on the same modality by adding the human support, offering support via text. And at that point, I was the only one when we design this platform, and we thought, okay, let's just see the kind of response we'll get. And there's been no looking back ever since. And we've only hired more therapists to continue to support the need that's being generated. And we realized that text was providing a safe space. Text is therapeutic by itself, and that's why Wysa already had, without any marketing campaigns, I think when we started with the human support, we had already reached around 1+ million downloads. That's when we had decided to start the text-based service that we are offering right now. And we designed our own escalation pathways within the app, where we decided that we would never say it's treatment-focused therapy, because we realized text has its limitations. There are cues which are not available, which are available in the audio-video modalities. But we also wanted to be present for people in a way where they were able to use Wysa and its exercises in a guided way, and find a safe space to vent out and get that point in time support that we could help them with. For a lot of people, we realized it was the first time that they were trying out something similar to therapy. They were trying out speaking to human without being judged, without being, dealing with their own stigmas, not wanting to go out and reach out to an in-person therapist. For a lot of people, they were already in therapy, but because the therapy wait times were so so huge. I have my first therapy session today, and the next therapy session is only after 30 days. How do I manage that gap in between the 30 days? How do I practice or adhere to the routines and skills that my in-person therapist is telling me? The motivation goes down by the time it's my second session. So a lot of people found it very supportive in that sense. And then there were a lot of people who had just ended therapy and were trying to come out in the world by themselves, trying to be emotionally independent, but were still a little shaky about their confidence. And we realized that what was a common thing that could help everybody was helping people work on their self-efficacy, which has become like a big goal for us, whether it's support that we deliver via Wysa or via our therapy team. Also answering your question about how we catering to different people from different parts of the world, is that we don't say it's a evidence-based model. We don't say it's a treatment-focused therapy. What we say, it's a recovery-oriented practice, where we uh, irrespective of what the client is bringing in, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's daily life issues, whether they're coming from the US, the UK, or India, we speak to them, try and understand how they define their recovery, how they want to see their life, regardless of where they're coming from or what they are bringing in, and then help them design those goals and help them feel more confident and increase their self-efficacy about managing their daily life. And we encourage them to seek in-person therapy if that's what's needed. That becomes a goal by itself, because if we see somebody struggling a lot and they have some goals for their lives, but for that they do need that intense therapy, then one of the goals become to motivate them and to help them go and seek out that therapy. So a lot of our processes have been designed in a way which keeps the clinical safety in mind, which keeps high risk scenarios in mind. And we are trying, we train our therapists in-house. The recruiting process is such where we want them to have at least 5 years of experience in in-person therapy or in-person counseling. So they are able to translate those techniques they are practicing in their clinics via a text-based platform. And we also do mock sessions as a part of the hiring process to see, we cannot judge that they would be able to, help someone in a perfect way in that one session assessment that we do, but we get to see whether they have that flair, whether they have that empathy in writing, whether they're able to support a client via their words. And then they have an in-house training period of about 30 days where they have these mock sessions, get familiar with the dashboard, have InfoSec training, have GDPR and HIPAA trainings to understand the needs that people from different countries, the rights that they have with regards to their data. So we are kind of strengthening the safety, the security aspects, and also the trying to deliver the best in terms of the support that we are promising them.
So you're expanding to the US, is that correct? In terms of, tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did that decision come about? What does this mean for the expansion?
Let me take that. Let me try to answer that, and please, guys, pitch in. I think, Grin, the way we're thinking about it is what we have built at Wysa now. I think in our last 4 or 5 years has been a safety net. I think it is, we have what we set out to achieve, we have created that safe space. We have created a safety net for people who are feeling vulnerable, who want to stay anonymous and who want to take support. And I think we are doing that. I think we have achieved that mission. And now at the same time, we've also done all the hard bits. We've created we've created a AI based platform where people are comfortable, and it's being used extremely well. The text-based therapy and the way Smitri has built the team has been fantastic. I think and I think that has itself been an experiment in delivering care. And we have, but now what we're seeing is that users are wanting more. And there is also that opportunity to add to the kind of support which we're providing, saying, why stop at text? It is a self-imposed limitation for us. If the user wants more additional support, why should we not give it to them? And from that point of view, then obviously the next barrier or the next frontier becomes building teams of therapists in each country with appropriate licensing, where they can deliver audiovisual therapy in country. And that is what we want to do now. And it is completely aligned to why we started Wysa and why we're doing what we're doing, and saying that we have this huge demand or this huge need of people. We add about 4,000 users a day completely organically. So there's a huge amount and we know that there is demand. And I think 30-40% of that comes from the US. So it's our largest geography of users. So when you know that there is such a pool of people who are looking for help, why are we not giving it to them? And I think that's the motivation behind it. And so we are now going to add another layer, and we're going to add that team. And that is what we're seeking to build in the next 6 months.
So I can anticipate a question from the therapists in our group. Obviously, we'll have a networking session after this is released, and we'll get to talk, and maybe you'll field questions from them. But we have a lot of therapists at Therapists in Tech that have worked for other companies in this capacity, and felt a little bit like it was a kind of an Uberization of therapy, where they're like on their own as like a free contractor. They don't have this home. Are your therapists in the US going to be part of your team and, going to these town halls kind of in the culture, or are you looking at more of a marketplace model?
No, we would not do a marketplace model. For us, we have to do it right if we do it, and we have to do it Wysa style, which means, solve the problem. And you don't solve the problem by not creating a safe space for your employees while trying to create a safe space for the users. You have to create a safe space for everybody. And definitely inclusion doesn't just start from saying, I'm going to make a diversity hire. Inclusion starts from saying everybody in Wysa, whether they're an intern or a CEO, is the same and is included. So it's Ramakant and I have actually moved to Boston. We're in India at the moment, but we now live in Boston for the most of the year. And we're beginning to hire a chief clinical officer to build that team. So not only will that be a team, but also the founders will be based in the same geography.
Oh, that's wonderful. So to close up tonight, thank you for coming, or in the morning for you, for sharing your story, being vulnerable, telling us about all the trials, along the way. I think my last question just has to do with kind of looking out at the vision for global digital mental health. Like, where do you see it going? Even your own company has evolved to meet the needs of users. Like, what do you see for the future?
I think it's the pandemic has had one silver lining, that digital mental health has become accepted as something that is necessary. One that I think everybody sees. What people don't see is also it has normalized what we call the missing middle of mental health. That there used to be wellness and there used to be clinical support, like EAP or health plans. But everybody needs a little bit of help to be able to sort things out themselves. And most people were getting worse without building the skills to figure out how to work through their own negative thoughts, negative cycles, staying up late, and creating a space, these safe spaces like Wysa, right now in English, right now on text. We are now taking it to voice. Again, trying to work in places where, that doesn't end up a lot of data on a server which you don't want it to. So in a private way, in a safe way, and then take it to multiple languages. And over time, if it becomes something that everybody, I know that at least 3 million people in their families, if somebody's feeling upset, they say, I just need to talk to Wysa for a bit, and I'll get myself out of it. If people build those habits, where they can actually manage their own mental health better and access really easily therapy. It's a matter of cost, it's a matter of availability, it's a matter of training. So I think it's not a small answer, but at least the world has begun to see where the solution will come from. And hopefully there'll be 100 more people like us, and eventually we'll see democratization of mental health access.
That's great. Any other last thoughts closing?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to you, Grin, for the opportunity to tell our story. And also, I think to the entire audience who will be, the community who will be seeing this, because I think this itself, the fact that people are getting together and talking about issues like this, and the fact that the way Joe said, digital mental health is coming and occupying center stage, I think augurs very well for the future for all of us. And we want to work with, I think, the community, which fantastic community you already have, and contribute as much as we can. So thank you again for having us here.
Thank you. And for anyone watching, if you are watching on the day that this is airing, next Friday, we are having a networking session where you can speak to everyone here live, and we'll talk in small groups about global digital mental health, talk about Wysa. If you had questions that came up from watching this video and say, hey, I want to know how they do that, that'll be your chance to ask those questions. So come on back, and thank you again to everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for this, Grin.